Hi, this is Carlos. Look for my book, Lessons from Mars, at Amazon or wherever you buy books, or visit my website, lessonsfrommars.net. Hi, this is Carlos Valdez-Depan, and welcome back to my series of podcasts on high-performance collaboration and teamwork. We've been working through the practices that we developed while creating a framework at Mars Incorporated for high-performance teamwork. And I've reached the two practices in our framework that are associated with what we call the discipline imperative. If you want more on that, you can either go back to earlier podcasts where I talk about the three imperatives, or you can grab the book Lessons from Mars. So the first of these two is called Activate Ways of Working. Now, I mentioned in an earlier podcast that at Mars, folks talk about team processes like meetings and decision-making as ways of working. Just a language thing. So when was the last time you went to a meeting and found yourself sitting there and to yourself saying, why did I say yes to this meeting? What am I supposed to be doing here? I don't get it. I feel out of place. I don't feel like this meeting is giving me any value or I'm providing any value to this meeting, right? That happens when a team or a group hasn't figured out how its processes should align with what matters and who needs to be involved. These are some of the basic questions that get answered in the earlier practices we've talked about. Activate Ways of Working is really nothing more, and we talked about this in the Discipline Imperative episode, nothing more than aligning your team processes and ways of working with your team purpose, with the work you've decided to share. It's aligning with what you've said matters, making sure your meetings only cover those things that are really relevant to all the people in the room. And meetings are just one part of discipline, right? Decision-making is another. Again, we've talked about that earlier in the discussion on the discipline imperative. Are your decision-making agreements lined up with your team's inspiring purpose and that radar screen I described, right? Is the work aligned? Are the decisions aligned, with the shared work? Third, I'll talk a little bit more about this because in this age of technology, it's more important than ever. It's connectivity. How do we stay connected? Some people would say communications. I think the word's a bit too vague, communication. So I talk about how do we stay connected. This is really important for groups that don't sit in the same office or same plant. What are the tools and techniques we agree are the right ones for us to have an appropriate level of connection between meetings? Should we be using WhatsApp? Lots of teams I know do use that. For our meeting, should we use Skype or Zoom? Should we use Blue Jeans? You pick it. The technologies are all over the place. And what rules will govern our connectivity? Are we allowed to send each other emails at 3 a.m. Singapore time or not? So establishing rules around these and simple disciplines help teams to keep, as I say, the factory running. These are the gears that need to mesh and keep turning as the team works. You don't want to have to think about a team meeting agenda every time you have a meeting. You want to establish standing agendas that focus on the things you've agreed are important. It's going to save a tremendous amount of time. Decision-making. You're not decision-making about everything. Only the things that you've agreed matter. So these disciplines are all about helping people manage their energy by helping the team manage its time and energy more effectively. There is another disciplined practice, and it's sustain and renew. Sustain and renew is, as I said in a previous episode, about team learning. Now, the key here is, as I said at the end of that episode, making learning a team habit, establishing what I call a rhythm of learning. Once you've done your team purpose and you've done the crystallized intent practice and you've made your agreements about activate ways of working, every so often you need to stop and ask, is this serving us? Is our purpose the right purpose a year later? Are our ways of working still aligned with the stuff we said we had to do? Some work will have ended since we established our crystallized intent. We need to put more work in and take some work out. And then we need to realign. If teams don't pause and reflect and inquire, then they will become out of step, right? Their agreements won't match what they're doing. That's what sustain and renew is really about. And by the way, there's a rhythm I recommend in the book for doing it. It's not a rhythm, pardon me. There's a model I recommend in the book for doing this. Pause, reflect, inquire, plan, and act. Nothing new. It's nothing new. The big challenge here is to pause and reflect. If you're a busy person, like my colleagues and associates at Mars were, pausing and reflecting is going to take some effort. Again, it has to become a habit. So what do? You build it into your agendas. You go back to that previous practice, activate ways of working, and you say every month or every quarter, we're going to stop, reflect, inquire, learn, and get better, right? That's the heart of sustain and renew. And by the way, one other part of this, as I was thinking about the names for these practices, the word renew felt really important. We work so hard at Mars. I mean, myself, my colleagues, we were all flat out all the time. We loved our work, but we would become weary. You need once in a while to pause and renew, right? It's an internal renewal as well as a renewal for the team. This is not unimportant. Sustain and renew. Next, I want to talk about one other aspect, team learning, and we'll cover that in another podcast. Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please rate the show on iTunes or contact me with your feedback through my website, lessonsfrommars.net. You can find my book, Lessons from Mars, at Amazon or wherever you prefer to buy books, or, again, through my website, lessonsfrommars.net.